There's a quiet revolution happening at every single petrol pump across India. It's changing the very chemistry of the fuel in your tank. This is the story of the E20 Revolution, what it is, why it's happening, and what it means for every single driver in the country.
So, have you felt it? That feeling like you're visiting the fuel station just a little more often these days? Well, you are not imagining things. And there's a huge national story behind that feeling, one that involves energy security, cleaner air, and yeah, a really big trade-off. Let's start at the beginning.
All right, to really get a grip on just how big this change is, we've got to rewind the clock a bit. For decades, the fuel situation in India was, well, incredibly simple, a whole world away from where we are today.
I mean, for generations of Indian drivers, fuel was just petrol. That's it. A straightforward 100% fossil fuel, almost all of it imported, that powered the nation. No blends, no confusing acronyms. But the world and what India needed was changing, and changing fast. Okay, this is where the story really takes a turn. Two major crises basically forced India to look for an alternative. It was a national wake-up call that made the old way of doing things pretty much unsustainable.
First up, the money. By 2022, India was importing a staggering 87% of its crude oil. Think about that. It left our entire economy incredibly vulnerable to global price swings and conflicts happening thousands of miles away.
And then, of course, there was the air we breathe. Our major cities were constantly topping the world's most polluted lists, and vehicle emissions were a massive part of that problem. The cost to our health and the environment was just getting too high to ignore. Something had to give.
So, what was the solution? Well, enter ethanol. It's a biofuel, an alcohol, made right here in India from things like sugarcane and surplus grains. It offered a potential fix for both problems, a homegrown fuel that could cut our reliance on foreign oil and, critically, burned a lot cleaner than pure petrol.
Now, with ethanol on the table as a real solution, the government didn't just dip its toes in the water. No way. It decided to take an ambitious leap forward, setting up a new national mandate and hitting the accelerator on the whole timeline.
And you can see just how quickly this all happened. The original goal, set back in 2018, was to get to 20% ethanol blending, that's E20, by 2030. But then, India smashed its 10% blending target way ahead of schedule in 2022. Seeing that success, the government just floored it, pushing the final E20 deadline forward by years.
And that brings us to the new reality. The official rule is crystal clear. From April 1st, 2026, E20 petrol isn't just an option, it is the standard fuel everywhere in the country. So what exactly is this E20 stuff we keep talking about? It's really simple. It's a fuel blend that's 20% ethanol and 80% petrol. That's the new normal. You see at the pump.
But there's another really important part of this, a minimum RON of 95. Now, what on earth is RON? Just think of it as a fuel's ability to prevent engine knocking, that damaging pinging sound you sometimes hear. And here's the key. Ethanol is naturally high octane, so blending it in doesn't just make the fuel cleaner, it actually helps protect modern engines from that kind of damage.
Of course, a change this massive doesn't happen without a few bumps in the road. For the average driver, you and me, this whole shift has created a real dilemma and raised some totally valid concerns.
Yeah, drivers are noticing a few key things. First, lower mileage. This is just basic physics, really. Ethanol has a little less energy per liter than petrol, which leads to about a 6 to 7% drop in fuel efficiency. Then there are worries about engine health, especially for older vehicles that weren't built for E20. They could see faster wear and tear on some parts.
And this really gets to the heart of the frustration, doesn't it? You hear it all the time. Why should I pay the same price for fuel that doesn't take me as far? It's a trade-off that feels a little unfair, and it has led to a lot of questions. But there is another side to this story.
To understand why this policy was pushed so aggressively, we need to zoom out. Let's step away from our individual cars for a second and look at the massive benefits this brings on a national scale.
The wins for the country as a whole are huge. The E20 program saves India over $4 billion every single year in oil import costs. It also provides a stable, new source of income for around 50 million farmers. And, crucially, it means we all get to breathe cleaner air.
And just look at the numbers for the environmental win. This data from Niti Aayog is incredible. Just moving to a 10% ethanol blend cut carbon monoxide emissions by 20% in cars. Pushing to E20 slashes those harmful emissions by a massive 30% compared to pure petrol.
That's a direct, measurable improvement.
So when you put all the pieces together, you arrive right at the heart of the issue. It's a classic trade-off, really, a personal cost for a collective gain.
This is the core bargain. On one side of the scale, you have the personal cost, a little less mileage for your car. But on the other side, you've got these huge national prizes, greater energy security, a big boost for our farmers, and a healthier environment for every one of us.
Maybe this is the best way to think about it. That slightly faster drop of the fuel gauge is your small contribution to a much, much larger national project. It's a shift in perspective, right? From just being a consumer to being a participant in this massive energy transition.
And that leaves us all with the big question. When you weigh a few extra kilometers per liter against a more secure and sustainable future for the entire country, what's the right balance? It's a trade-off every single citizen is now a part of, every time they visit the pump.